Well, today we have the pleasure of welcoming Dr. Marianne Brandon on the show. Thank you so much for being with us.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure.
Well, your introduction is one of the most eclectic we've had on the show, and I think it's wonderful. So, first question for you is: throughout your career as a clinical psychologist, a diplomat in sex therapy, author, and futurist, what has
Uh-huh.
surprised you most about men, women, and their dynamics together?
You know what? I have a very easy answer to that because I was very surprised. When I began my career as a sex therapist, I thought, so this was a while ago, this was a couple decades ago, I thought men and women were essentially the same sexually. I was sort of raised by a feminist mother who said, we're all the same. And I thought that held true across the board. And I thought that if I created a safe space in my therapy room, I'd be hearing the same things from men and women. So I went into my therapy expecting that. And that is absolutely not what I found. And it totally threw me off because that's not what I was prepared for. So that sent me into quite a tizzy because here I am taking money from people, trying to be helpful and not hearing what I expected to hear. So that threw me down a wild goose chase to really understand what are these differences between men and women, because I had sort of been indoctrinated that we're all the same. And in many ways we are, but not sexually.
Hmm. Okay, so in what ways are we similar sexually, and in what ways are we just fundamentally different?
So I would say we're all similar sexually in that we want some of the very basic things like we want to be loved, we want to love, we want to be wanted, we want a healthy, intimate relationship. Like all of these things we all share. But there are some very distinct differences as well. There are actually differences in sex drive between men and women that are very misunderstood. There's science behind it, but it's never addressed. And so people don't expect that. And people have different experiences with desire. So, not just differences in desire, but um, we call them inhibitory factors and excitatory factors. Okay, so inhibitory factors are things like, the kids are in the house, and so it's hard to want sex. Excitatory factors are like, I don't know, you just saw a sexy movie or you just had a nice evening with your partner. But what we know is women have many more inhibitory factors than men. Now, there's probably I believe completely that there are evolutionary reasons for this. And really, that's where I sort of came to is that all these differences I see sexually are evolutionarily induced. So women have more inhibitory factors, men have more excitatory factors. And for heterosexual relationships, that creates all kinds of challenges. Now, what I can tell you is the reason this is so confusing is that it really only plays out or primarily plays out in long-term relationships. So at the beginning of a relationship, or if people aren't in a committed relationship, women, for the most part, have the experience of having as strong a sex drive or stronger than her male partner. And she thinks that's who she is sexually, understandably so. So when she's then in a long-term part with a long-term partner and all of this stuff starts to play out, and this isn't the only thing that plays out, by the way, but it is one of the things, then she's confused. Like, what's going on? This isn't who I am. Am I with the wrong guy? Is he doing something wrong? Am I doing something wrong? It sets everyone kind of in a tizzy. But that's the reason it's misunderstood, because it really just plays out in long-term relationships.
So, so evolutionary speaking,
Mm.
why does the drop off in desire, or I guess mismatch in desire, that's so common in long term relationships? Why does that happen?
Well, so my way of understanding, I've studied animal primate sex quite a bit when I found myself in this dilemma, as I told you, as a new therapist. So I studied all of this. And it Mother Nature, or nature really only wanted us to pair up and reproduce. That was the goal. That's primates' goal. We're primates. We're apes. That's what we are. So after that, Mother Nature couldn't care what we did sexually. She just wants us in and out, right? So ultimately, this long-term relationship stuff was our idea. It's a great idea, but we invented it. So we don't have any biology to support it. And in fact, our biology supports something else. So, our biology or women's inhibitory factors, I think, are the result of Mother Nature's goal for her was to have babies and raise babies. And if she was distracted by sex all the time, that was going to be a problem because she's got to make sure those infants become people. So if she's like feeling self-conscious because the kids are in the house, from Mother Nature's perspective, that's right. Because why are you having sex when your kids are needing you, in the house? So it all really makes sense. And I have to say, like much of the inhibitory factors we hear from women, we never, ever, ever hear from men. So, this concept of I can't have sex because the kids are nearby, I have not heard that one time in 25 years from a guy. Now, I had not one time. Now, I
Yeah.
have heard a guy say, I can't have sex when the kids are in the bed, but that's a very different issue, right? Not kids are in the house. So I hear from guys, I can't have sex. I'm exhausted when I'm exhausted from work and, I'm depressed. I can't have sex. Okay, everybody sort of feels those things, but there are more particular issues that we hear from women and we do not hear from men.
Well, slightly less fussy men, right? But I think you and a lot of your work is, you brilliantly tie it to our evolution. And when I was prepping for this, and I came across, you said it somewhere where the discrepancies can be understood with
Yeah,
finite eggs from a female side and essentially infinite shots on goal or whatever you want to call it for the male side equivalent, right?
right.
So it would we be correct in saying that is the sort of fundamental evolutionary reason why we have these discrepancies?
Yes, but there are other issues too. But I have a fun kind of story about that helps people understand, if I may offer that. Yeah.
Please go.
Okay. So because I lecture on this topic, and um, this concept seems sort of maybe almost too basic to a lot of people. So this is how I describe it. It helps people understand. So if you were a gardener and you were hungry and you wanted to grow vegetables, and I'm the person with all the seeds. So you come to me and you say, look, I'm starving. I need to grow a garden so I can eat. And I say, oh, here, have a bag of seeds. In fact, have as many seeds as you want. And if you run out, just come back. I'll give you more. And so what do you do to garden? Well, you're hungry and you need food. So you're just going to throw those seeds everywhere because any plant that fertilizes is food for you and you're starving. So you're just going to throw seeds like at random all over the place and you're going to eat. Now, your neighbor watches you and says, hey, I need to do that too because I'm hungry. So they come to me, but let's say I don't like them so much. And I say, here's 8 seeds. Good luck to you. And they go out, they've got 8 seeds. Now they got to make food with 8 seeds. So what are they going to do? They're going to evaluate the soil. They're going to evaluate the sunshine. They're going to evaluate the nutrients and the water, and every single thing they can think of is going to be really important. And they're going to plant those seeds very carefully. And so that's essentially the difference. Women, we are born with a finite number of eggs, and we have to, from an evolutionary perspective, this is all unconscious, but we have to use those very carefully. And our ancestors that were able to reproduce successfully, they used those eggs carefully. So that's in our DNA.
Mm.
And so those were the successful women who reproduced. Now, the successful guys who reproduced did it very differently, and that's in your DNA. They were like, okay, let's get going. So that's the difference. It gets passed on. It's not a conscious thing, but we can't ignore hundreds of thousands of years of evolution. Sexuality is so primal, and so it all gets played out in this kind of way. And so that leads to the conversation we just had about inhibitory factors and excitatory factors. It sort of is the groundwork for that. Does that make
Mm.
sense?
It does, yeah, it really does. Do you think a lot of the topics of conversation, the topics of issues that you see in your therapy room with couples are downstream of this sort of what do you call it, outdated evolutionary circuits we've inherited?
Yeah, I do. I do think that. And there are other issues too that play out. So, for example, this isn't the only one. There's, from an evolutionary perspective, women have a higher disgust response than men do, just in general. And so, um, we also have a higher sexual disgust response than men. So this makes sense from an evolutionary perspective because women are gestating babies, they're breastfeeding. If they're ingesting toxic material, their baby will die. So they have a lower tolerance for disgust. And again, that plays out sexually too. But here's the thing that's tricky is that if her disgust response is here, lust, what people feel at the beginning of a relationship, can trump disgust. So if her lust response is up here and disgust is here, but it's a new relationship, she's not noticing this. She's noticing this, and they're doing a wide variety of stuff. Okay. But then as a relationship ages and that lust response sort of naturally starts to decrease, what becomes more prominent? Her disgust response. And so now she says to me, I used to love receiving oral sex. I don't like it anymore. Now, I've never heard that from a man, but I hear that a lot from women.
Well,
That's the disgust response now primary. And that creates a lot of challenge for couples because guys will say, what was this, a bait and switch? Like you used to like this, you don't like this anymore. And she doesn't know what just happened. Like she's all in, she doesn't get it. But these kind of physiological things play out and they're evolutionarily based and they confuse couples.
mm,
And I always say, you can't solve a problem you don't understand. And it's unfortunate that in our culture today, we've really wanted to minimize these differences because no one understands then, how to fix it. If people understand the biology and the predisposition, they blame each other less, they feel less shame about it, and they can come up with, ways to work with it. But if they don't understand it, they're just confused and they
mm.
don't know what to do.
Well, it
So.
seems like your it seems like a oh sorry, one moment, something just popped up. Seems like your lens is an evolutionary psychology lens, right? And there's something about our culture where people shun this because I think it takes away from free will, and I make those decisions. I'm not some sort of jumped up ape and all these different things. I mean, why do you think people are so defensive when it comes to accepting sort of evolutionary psychology?
That's a good question. Um, I think there is we don't like to feel like we don't have complete control. And so that's one thing. Like if something so basic and important as sex has elements that are sort of outside of our control, people don't like that. People like to feel empowered and it's all up to them. People don't like to feel like apes. Like they like to think that they're more evolved than that. I mean, I get that. And again, people have had different experiences at the beginning of a relationship. So that's what feels true for them. So even if they hear all this and they say, yeah, that makes sense for other people, but I'm in college and I'm more sexual than the guys I meet, that's her reality right now. She's not been in a long-term relationship. So she won't even start to feel this stuff until her 30s or 40s.
Mm, wow. So what would you? I've heard you talk about sort of desire being it's primal instinct, right? We're sort of touching around it now. Do you
Mm.
think do you think it's a good thing to reconnect with these primal motives and instincts, or do you think it's something we should bury and suppress and never speak about?
Oh, I absolutely think in safe, trusting, respectful relationships, it is a necessary component. It's a necessary component. What's happened? So we approach sex from like the way I describe it is different parts of our brain. Like we all have like our logical brain that we approach sex from there, and we have an emotional brain. We approach sex from there, but we have a primal brain that we share, with even reptiles and mammals, and we approach sex from there too. And that's more of like the lusty drive kind of thing. And we can't ignore any piece of it. It all plays out in the bedroom. And if we ignore the primal animalistic stuff, it all goes to porn. It all gets channeled out. And that's like the most potent. Now, people are uncomfortable with it for a variety of reasons, one of which is it's vulnerable to show up in that kind of way. People can often do that easier in a short term relationship. It's sort of like they have nothing to lose. They can come in there a little more animalistic, a little less polite, and just go for what they want and show their desire and all that. In a longer term relationship, it actually does get harder to do that. You'd think it would get easier because you trust the person more, and it actually doesn't. It gets more difficult, but I think it's really essential. It's not the only essential component to a long-term relationship's healthy sex over time. It's lovemaking is important too, but this is super important. And you know what? People don't need a lot of it, but they need a little of it every once in a while. It doesn't have to be all sex, but it has to be some sex. So it's less polite sex. It's like not politically correct. It's like people show their desire in their faces, and they don't, they're not like, how do you want to be touched? They're like, this is how I want to touch you. Now,
Mm.
I say this because it's in a trusting relationship. Nobody's questioning whether or not they're equally respected and loved. And you need that basis, or otherwise, this stuff becomes potentially, trauma. So now that's a big word because I did say you don't need a lot of it. And I mean that sincerely. You don't need a lot of it. But if you have none of it, it gets channeled out. So
Mm.
you got to allow some of this animal stuff. But again, I'm going to repeat myself because this, I think, is such an important piece of it. It's vulnerable feeling to do that. People, good sex, you got to allow for vulnerability for good sex in a long-term relationship. And people hate being sexually vulnerable. They hate it. So
Yeah.
it's not so simple. But
So so you need a little bit of this primal animalistic, or I guess you need a little bit of your innate wiring to show through, right?
right.
For a healthy relationship,
Yeah.
long-term relationship moving forward.
Hmm.
Easier in short-term relationships, as we discussed, with that disgust and desire um,
Right.
ratio. So in long-term committed relationships who maybe it's 2025, people are as it almost seems to go against what we're told culturally, that
Yeah.
tap into your innate sort of animalistic side as in a couple. So what do you say to couples who come in and they have a quite an alien reaction to what you just said, saying, but that's not
Absolutely.
what we're being told culturally? How would you deal with that?
Well, first I say, it really is going to depend on how important sex is to you. And for some people, it's not that primary, in which case they can do whatever they want. It's not that important. But if it is important for a couple to have good sex over the decades, I explained to them that Mother Nature wasn't intending to make that happen for you. So you have to like hijack your own biology. You have to like play into it. You can't avoid it if this is your goal. And so, we talk about the fact that probably what they're fantasizing about is exactly this. People don't like to really share their ultimate fantasies, but it's in this realm. People don't have politically correct fantasies. So, I use that as proof too. So when you are masturbating and you want to have an orgasm, where does your brain go? Probably not PC. It goes to a place like that. So I also ask people, what was the best sex of your entire life? Chances are it was something that we could understand as not necessarily PC, whether it was a new partner or trying something different, but there was like a loss of control. There was a letting go that isn't careful sex. So, I make the case and so that they understand why this is so important. But then um I guess one of the ways I might teach them, if they're open to doing this, I probably would have them both agree that this is a goal. And I would have them both on their own start to practice this because this is not something they've probably shared. So I would probably say to them, find a piece of music that represents this, like some hard rock kind of bangy sort of stuff, right? And then I would tell them to lock themselves in a room and start to learn to let your body move like this. Feel it in your body and see what your body wants to do with this.
Mm.
And allow your body to start to show you how to bring this into the room. Now, this is easier for some people than others, and some people need a lot of practice. They have to get comfortable with themselves first in this space before they can show someone else this feeling. But it also involves not just movement, but showing it in your eyes. And that's difficult. It's difficult to show passion. What I tell guys, because guys are always told, don't show your emotion. And they're really told not to show passion. I mean, that can get them into trouble in the world. But I tell them to sexually harass their partner with their eyes. That makes sense to them.
Mm.
And women love that. Now, in long-term relationships, we're not talking short-term. We're talking committed people. But I don't know that's ever fallen flat. In all the decades I've been a sex therapist, I don't know that that's ever fallen flat with a couple who were committed together. Women love to feel wanted. They love to see that in their partner's eyes. So sexually harass her with your eyes, move your body like you would move to that music. I have them agree when they're going to try it and put some version of that kind of music in the bedroom. And their goal is less to please their partner and more to see what their body wants to do with that music. Now, it's going to take a little practice. So, it's not going to probably go so smoothly at first. And everybody's going to feel self-conscious because it is a vulnerable feeling until you get used to it. But that's probably what I would say. And no giggling, no baby talk. Like that's where people go when they feel vulnerable sexually. And that's going to ruin the whole thing. So they've got to be very conscious to learn to tolerate this stuff. And, maybe they could work their way up to it by watching porn together and just like allowing that to happen without judging it, watching some more primal piece of porn. That might be another way to go. But ultimately they need to feel it in their body to make it happen.
Mm. Okay, well, I mean, there's so many good takeaways. Then I can hear my male friends just writing, making notes, coping.
That's great.
Probably
Love it.
one of my most favorite quotes in this podcast is "hijacking your own biology," which is a wonderful quote. Love that. It makes a lot of intuitive sense.
Yeah.
Um, you've discussed what women don't say and what men don't say. So when they're in your office, what are the most common things men and women don't actually say, but they want to say and get it out?
That men don't say.
Correct. Yeah. What were they sort of sitting on for the first couple of sessions before they feel comfortable?
So guys will say that they don't feel wanted by their partner. They'll say, like we're all heterosexual. We're talking about heterosexual relationships, right? Well, guys will say they don't feel wanted. Like when they see their partner undress, it turns them on. But when they undress, their partner couldn't care. Guys will say it's feels horrible to be sexually rejected and that's not appreciated by their partner, like that sexual rejection is a really difficult form of rejection, and it hurts. And we don't recognize that in our culture. We don't take that as seriously as we should. Um, the guys will say, I can't, there's no way to touch her. Like every way I touch her, she says she doesn't like it. She's got all these rules. I used to be able to touch her breasts. I can't touch her breasts. I used to be able to touch her neck. I can't touch her neck, or whatever else. But those rules are like we've talked about already. That's the stuff that unfolds over time. All this stuff is stuff that unfolds over time. Um, I mean, those are the things that come to mind initially.
Okay, and
You know what the other thing is attraction. And everybody has a hard time saying, my partner, my experience of most people is they have a lot of wiggle room for their partner's aging. Okay, so I don't want this the takeaway to mean nobody can age. But people do care if their partner, shows up looking sexy in whatever way they can, or, brushes their teeth or whatever else. Like, so there's like an appearance kind of thing. And guys are afraid that that's going to get misunderstood. Like, it's not 5 pounds that's making the difference. It's the enthusiasm and the care that they bring to the situation. So I don't know. I hear that too.
okay, right. So it's like, making sure they're bringing the sort of best self, putting their best foot forward. And
Exactly.
okay, that's clear. And what about for the other side of the coin with with women? What is it they want to
They
say but find it hard to sort of tell you?
Women will say, now not all women, but I will hear women say, I don't care if I ever have sex again. So that's one of these, again, that's the result of all the things we've just talked about. And what I tell her is, you say that now, but if you and your partner decide to divorce and you're back on the dating scene, first of all, you're going to have a huge interest in sex again, and you're going to say to yourself, wow, I was with the wrong guy, because look, here I am again. This is who I know myself to be. But give it 2 years and you're going to be right back here again. So if you have a good guy, let's figure out how to handle this now, because you're just going to replay this whole thing as soon as the short-term relationship becomes long-term. Okay. So what else will women say? Yeah, women will say nothing turns me on anymore. But again, that's the problem of the inhibition and excitatory factors like taking over. So I hear that a lot. And what I do with that is I explain to her, I'm going to backtrack to that, what we were just talking about, the inhibition factors and the excitatory factors. That's called the dual control model of sexual desire. And where therapists go wrong with this is they'll focus on the inhibition factor. So when women come in and say, I can't have sex when the kids are in the house, and it's hard to be a wife and a mother and feel sexual, and I'm exhausted at work, and I'm sleep deprived, and I've got back problems, and I'm on an antidepressant, and my partner doesn't do the dishes, and she gives me eight reasons why she doesn't want sex. And where therapists will go wrong is they'll start trying to work on all that. But the answer to, I don't know what turns me on, is to focus on amping up excitatory factors. Okay. Not necessarily removing the inhibition stuff, because that stuff can be hard to change and it's legit. But amping up the excitatory factors means she's got to figure out what turns her on. That's hard to do. That's legitimately hard for her to do, because she has less excitatory factors than her partner, and so she doesn't know what turns her on. So that means that we go through erotica and porn and look for little clues. What could possibly help get you engaged? And then how do we sort of amp that up? It's not an easy process for women, but it can be very helpful.
Mm. And I guess from the guy's point of view, that sort of that inhibitory list maybe could be the focus as opposed to, I
Right.
guess, trying to focus on the excitatory list,
Extra-
right?
Extraordinary. Now, I want to explain some research to you that's really important in this
These two.
dynamic. Oh, and so that is that female arousal is, so the way we speak of it in research terms is non-specific. And what that means, arousal is different than desire, okay? So arousal is the body's response to sexual stimulation. So for her, that's lubrication to her genitals, that's blood flow to her genitals, that's arousal. Um, Different from desire. But female arousal is non-specific, meaning that her body is likely to arouse to all kinds of scenarios that she thinks is disgusting, inappropriate, whatever else. So here's the research. So the research is, and this has been so replicated, okay, so replicated. And we don't see this with guys at all. Guys don't show this. So what they do at the beginning of these studies is they ask women, what kind of fantasies turn you on? And women will say, oh, lesbian sex, heterosexual sex, group sex, whatever they say. Those are common, but whatever they say. And then they show these women a bunch of different porn videos. And while they do that, they're monitoring her body's arousal. So, these are very courageous women. They're like in a private room, but they've got, probes that can measure blood flow, lubrication, all this stuff. And so after each porn clip, then they're asked to subjectively say, was that exciting for you or not? And the women, write it out. And at the end of the study, they ask again, which porn did you like? They say the same things they said at the beginning, the lesbian sex or whatever they said. But their body's aroused to apes having sex. Their body's aroused to dominance themes that they would have said were inappropriate. Their body's aroused to a lot of stuff. Now, there are evolutionary hypotheses about why this is. I'm not sure. This one's a hard one for me to really feel confident about how to explain it, but it's there. This is a phenomenon that's there. So whenever I tell women we got to work on your amping up your excitatory response, I say, look, if you're doing it from here and trying to judge from here, you're going to rule most of it out. You've got to try to bring your consciousness like into your pelvis. And what does your pelvis like? Because probably your pelvis likes a lot more than you do. And if what we're trying to do is amp up your excitatory responses, you're going to be better served listening to your pelvis and just trying to ask your conscious mind to be less critical. That's hard to do, but super important. And we don't see this with guys at all. The same research we show men, like what turns you on, that's what gets them erect. At the end of the study, what the porn they liked, it was the porn they liked, and that's what got them erect, and that's the end of it. Like there's no confusion for them. So anyway, so it's an important piece of the puzzle for women to understand.
Definitely. I mean, one thing that comes up is guys just seem so much more rudimentary and very simple in this conversation. The
Right.
unsurprising answer with men usually is, I mean, I wasn't surprised to hear that in 25 years, guys haven't reported losing interest in oral sex. It's
Right.
helps
Right.
breathe. But the but the other side of the coin is it seems to be that dislocation with one's innate wiring again.
Yes.
You're sort of your conscious versus your unconscious, and thinking the conscious calls the shots. Naturally, it's your unconscious, right?
I think that's absolutely correct.
Okay.
Absolutely wise. Yes.
Well, it's interesting that because I was sort of I got conceptually what the study meant, but I was wondering in the back of my head how do you apply that as a in your day to day, and then that's I mean you beautifully put. It sounds like when you say connecting with their pelvis, but you're connecting with them with their innate wiring, right? You're aligning that with it, which sounds super
Exactly.
hard to do, I imagine, as well.
Very hard to do. So for many women, we're all spending so much time up here that this has so much power these days. So for women that find it particularly challenging, I would encourage her to like start doing yoga, not like quick, fast yoga, but like slow yoga that helps them feel their bodies. Because we have lots of research that shows that when people do yoga a few times a week, men and women, they feel their body's responses more and they're more apt to feel desire. And I think that can be very helpful in this process. But it's like a life shift. Like she's not going to be able to do 2 classes of yoga and then use that for this purpose. It's more of a lifetime of yoga as a part of her stress reduction that will help her tune more into her pelvis over time.
Okay, that seems like really sound advice and very easy
Mhm.
takeaway for people listening. Um, when we were emailing back and forth, booking a slot to record, you mentioned you went to some tech expedition in Las Vegas with all sorts of consumer and products and things and awesome sex technology, I guess, for lack of a better word. It's not something I know.
Yeah.
Like, what role does tech have in modern day relationships and intimacy, and if at all, if any play?
So that's a great question because, you know, tech is a double-edged sword and it can create a lot of challenges for couples, but it also can be really helpful for couples. And I have to tell you, we don't necessarily need to go there today, but I do have very many worries down the road because this stuff is becoming so potent and so powerful that in many ways it's going to be able to surpass what a human can provide. And tech already can offer emotional connection as well as sexual stimulation. But let's put that aside and talk about how tech can be helpful for couples now, because I bring that into couples therapy quite a bit these days. So first of all, there are so let me say, for people like that are struggling with desire discrepancy, super great. And because this can allow many other options for couples to find like compromises other than intercourse. We could talk about that more specifically if you want to, because it is very helpful. But there are so many new sex toys out there, like you wouldn't even believe it. Like every time I give a lecture to therapists on sex tech and the future of intimacy. So I stay very immersed in this space. And every time I lecture, I have new things to say about like the new sex toys and stuff that came out. The one that I saw at Sex Tech at CES that was so hilarious. And these guys are getting a patent on this thing. Like it's a it's
Yeah.
a it's a like a device you put on your game controller and it connects to sex toys. So either a sex toy for a woman or a sex toy for a guy. And every time you do something right with your game controller, the thing vibrates. Yeah, why that's good. But I was like, wow, I didn't want to make them feel bad. But the point of this is I can guarantee people that if they haven't looked at modern sex tech, like even in the last few months, there's going to be something new to see. And you don't even have to go to a website that's focused. You just go to Amazon.com, you'll see this stuff. So, there are toys like that feel like the interior of a body or the interior of a mouth. So guys can have the experience of oral sex or intercourse. It feels like that. There are toys that guys can wear during sex. They fit on the base of the penis and stimulate them. So if they feel like they have a delayed ejaculation or erectile dysfunction, this can amp up stimulation for them. And there are a million toys for women that, sort of approach her body in a multitude of different ways. So whatever stimulation she likes, they're going to be able to find, something new for her. So people use this stuff during sex, but they can use it too if they're looking for like a compromise other than intercourse to make things interesting for each other, which we probably should go back to, but let me add some other tech here first, okay? So for people who haven't experienced virtual reality, it's super, super powerful. And the reason VR is so powerful is because your body responds, even though your mind knows it's not happening. Like your body will respond, even though your mind knows it's not happening. That's incredible. It would, I mean, it's incredible. So I don't want to use our time with a funny story about VR. I don't think so. Let me just,
I think you should. I think you should.
I should. Okay.
Yeah.
So the first time I tried this, because I was like, I want to see what all the hype was about. My husband and I were in New York City. We went to an Oculus store, which is, owned by Meta, and they make the most popular VR glasses right now. And so, because I wanted to understand the potency of VR porn, which would blow your mind, we should talk about some of that research. But anyway, so we were looking for a game to play so I could try out VR, and the only one I could find was called Walk the Plank, because the other ones were like Fight the Dinosaur or whatever. I don't know, but it wasn't good. So Walk the Plank is a plank, like a piece of wood, like you'd find in a garage, and you put on these glasses and you feel like you're going up 40 floors, and in an elevator, and then the elevator doors open and you see like this plank over 40 floors of a New York City street. So we thought, okay, that's a fun enough game, like whatever. So the woman that was running the game was right next to me, and my husband was right next to me. And we were all laughing, like the whole thing, I don't know, was funny from the get-go. So the woman put the glasses on me, and she was like, I'll be there the whole way. I'll help you walk. Okay, great. So I go up in the elevator, and it did feel like you're going up the elevator. The doors open, and I look down, and I grabbed the woman in a bear hug, like, because I couldn't move. So I grabbed her in a bear hug. Now she's laughing. I'm laughing. My husband's laughing. I mean, I'm laughing because I knew how stupid it was, but I couldn't let go of her because my body was responding. So I couldn't even, she was like, I'll help you walk. Let's just take a few steps. She was clearly used to this reaction, but I couldn't do it. And I couldn't even let go of her to take my glasses off. So she had to take off my glasses. And, my husband put the glasses on. He went up the elevator and he just sat down on the ground. He just sat down on the ground. So that's the power of VR. Now, some of it has to do with how potent your technology is, like how advanced your tech is or whatever, but we're all getting more advanced tech all the time. So, that's the power. So
Yeah.
you pair that, in a porn situation, and you feel like you're in the room with what's happening, or you look down and whatever's happening to the body seems like it's happening to your body because it's right where your body is. So it's not real, but it feels real.
Funny, I've had exactly the same experience with Walk the Plank. It's terrifying. Yeah, you're doing it and you're like, I'm an adult, I'm a fully grown adult, and I know I've just stepped up on a wooden plank, and I'm like no more than, I don't know, 10 inches off the ground, whatever it is, and it's terrifying. So yeah, if those out there listening, definitely try it. But I think it's really interesting because it shows you who calls the shots, right? Your unconscious calls the shots. And
Exactly.
what I find fascinating is, it sounds like your toolbox of things you can use to help people sexually, realigning with one's evolutionary roots, sort of thrown to the past, but then also being open-minded enough to have all these tools that are sort of based in today and the future, right?
Right.
So you got a lot at your disposal. Um, when it comes to the, oh, sorry, I had something I was going to mention with it. It was with regards to porn. You said with VR porn. So is talking about our evolutionary wiring, does porn hijack our dopamine circuits and our very primitive minds in a way that it has never been exposed to in its evolutionary past, right? Someone can view, over the course of an hour or so, way more than our ancestors ever experienced in their lifetime. A,
Yeah.
is that a good or bad thing? And B, how does VR technology maybe extrapolate that negatively or positively?
Right. So for most people, they say it's a good thing. Most people who watch porn say it enhances their life in whatever way, either their masturbatory life or their life with their partner, and it's not problematic. Excuse me. Now, there's a percentage of people that find it extraordinarily problematic. Now, we're just talking old-fashioned porn right now, like the stuff you see on your phone. So about up to maybe 7% of men find that really problematic for them, and about 3% of women. So most people feel like it's okay. But I do worry as this tech gets more and more potent, I have to believe these numbers are going to go up because it's just that much more compelling. But yeah, it does kind of feed that primal brain. And that's why I feel like it's so important, more important now than ever, for couples to bring that into their relationship. Because at least for the clients, the people that come see me, they would rather have that with their partner. They just don't know how to do it. And people are like not on the same page about the importance of it. But there's so much luring people in this dimension now that I think if couples don't do it, people are going to take it all out of the relationship. And I think that's going to drive people apart. So I do feel like it's really important. But we also have to recognize that it needs to be used mindfully because it is so potent that if people aren't careful, I think, like I said, more and more people are going to find they're just going to be drawn to that because it's so simple. Like they don't have to please a partner. They don't have to see if their partner's in the mood. They just throw on their glasses whenever they want and can find any activity they want. So this stuff is potent. We have to be careful, and we have to be really careful with adolescents because, oh my gosh, they don't have a platform for this at all.
Well, in the same way, the VR. Oh, sorry, go on.
Well, I was just gonna say, so there's there's a lot of research now already looking at what VR porn can offer as opposed to 2D porn for people in terms of the intensity of experience. So not only does just about everybody say, it's more intense, but we have research, for example, that shows that men who watched VR porn had an oxytocin release. That's the cuddle hormone. They don't have that with 2D porn, but Mhm. because they feel like they're in the room with these people and it's really happening with these people, they have an emotional reaction. They feel like they've had an emotional connection. Now, even more noteworthy, in my opinion, there was a study out of Denmark a year ago or so from a sperm bank, and they found that when they gave their guys VR porn, they got better quality sperm than when they ejaculated to 2D porn. Better quality sperm.
Right. That's blown my. So,
Right.
okay, why?
You
Is it the
see,
presence of oxytocin, or
what?
is it the presence of oxytocin?
No, I mean, I don't know. They didn't know either. They were just publishing their results. But I think they got better quality sperm because these guys. So this was a sperm bank, right? These were not guys that had trouble. They didn't have like a sperm problem. Like they were donating their sperm, and it just made them more excited. So it just made them more excited. So they had a better ejaculate. Like
I didn't know.
whatever.
Well, I mean, did you prior to reading that study, would you correlate better semen? I don't know what the term is, mortality, with excitement, or is that unrelated? In my head, they were unrelated. Excitement and good
Right.
function.
Yeah, that study blew my mind. I didn't know, like, and so what they found, though, this might help explain it. So what they found is the briefer time between ejaculates, the more powerful was this effect. So when a man ejaculates quick, like 6 hours later, 12 hours later, whatever, they're going to have less sperm, right? But and so this amped up the excitement, so they had you
Oh,
know
yeah.
yeah. But if they hadn't ejaculated in a week or whatever, there was less of an effect. So
Right. Okay, that does make sense. Yes.
okay.
Okay. Wow. What a. I have no idea what you do with that study, or what how that informs anything moving on. But yeah, bizarre.
Well, I think, to me, I tell people it because I want people to understand how potent this stuff is. And it's not a joke. It's not a joke. So we can use it, to enhance. And that's what has to happen. If we're not using this stuff to enhance people's sexual connections, eventually it's just all the potent sex is going to happen outside of a relationship.
Hmm.
So, you know, but I
So
also use that to tell people, like, if you've got kids, you've got to educate yourself about this kind of tech and prepare them, because an adolescent, their brain is still forming. They don't have any basis to understand a sexual relationship. And if this is what they're exposed to, uh,
Mm.
their expectation for sex is going to be not realistic, that kind of thing. So I want parents to get concerned.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's a very scary book called Addiction by Design about the casinos in Las Vegas, and it talks
Mhm.
about the traditional slot machines that have no tech in them or no computer in them, I should say. And you can do a game of, bar lemon in, let's say, a minute and a half. And then when the advent of a computerized slot machine came in, it shortened what they call the event frequency of when you get a dopamine spike. So you can play, instead, apart from one game in like a minute and a half or a minute, you can now play 6 games in a minute. So you get the constant dopamine hit over and over
Oh,
again. And then overnight, that became the most addictive gambling machine in the whole
oh,
casino. And I
yeah.
liken that form of TikTok shorts and YouTube shorts, that short format, for some reason, it sort of I mean, sort of as you said, it hijacks your biology because you
Mhm.
get more event frequency. And what
Yeah.
really concerned me, what you said was with the VR porn inducing more, releasing oxytocin as well. The
Mhm.
neurochemical formula for neuroplasticity has to invoke some form of oxytocin as well. I think I'm getting that right. So terrifying.
Terrifying. Yeah.
Yeah, terrifying. Well, I,
As I
no,
laugh.
yeah, no, me too. I mean, it's sort of it's kind of a hopeful laugh from both of us, I think. Um, so shifting gears slightly, we sort of like the last 10 minutes to sort of end with some quick fire questions.
Okay.
Um, This one throws people. What uncomfortable truth do you believe that very few people agree with you on?
That very few. I would say the differences between men and women sexually, honestly, it's taken me a long time to have the courage to speak that, because people don't want to hear it. But, sex is not what we want it to be. It's kind of how it is. We don't write these rules. So I would say that. I would say my fears for adolescence and the future of intimacy is another uncomfortable truth, because I come across as sex negative, which I am not. Um, and people are already so stressed they can't take anymore. Like, I tell my friends, they're like, just shut up. Like, I can't take it. People don't have the bandwidth right now. They're so stressed to recognize that intimacy is changing right before our eyes. People are having less sex, but that doesn't mean they're having less sexual experiences. They're just having less sex with each other and more with tech and all of that. So I would say that. And, in general, my understanding sex from an evolutionary perspective, people don't like that either. We talked about that. People like to feel like they have control. We are so easily manipulated. It's unbelievable. Humans are so easy to manipulate. You and me too. And nobody wants to hear that either. So honestly, I spent much of my career silent about this stuff because I didn't want the backlash. Because there is backlash out there. They're happy to give it to you. But at this point, I feel like we really need to embrace reality, or we're going to be in trouble. So,
Hmm. Okay, brilliant. I mean, there's a lot of food for thought in that. Um, in the last, let's say, last 5 years or so, what habit, practice, tool, piece of tech, you name it, has meaningfully improved your life?
improved my life. You know what? I got to say, I'm having a hard time. I'm a creature of habit. So, corporate knew a lot. So let's see here. Um, I mean, I have a new oxygen chamber. I love that. I have a hyperbaric chamber, and it has improved my life. It's kind
Tell
of
us about
crazy.
that.
Yes. So, um, it's used for the bends, when scuba divers
Mm.
but it just oxygenates your body. And I just sort of did this as an experiment, like, what would happen if I just oxygenated my body more. So I got this thing. They're kind of expensive. Like this isn't something to do every day, but um, I mean for everybody. But I love it. It's very meditative and very cozy in my chamber. If you're claustrophobic, you wouldn't like it, but I just feel like it's good for me. So I love my oxygen chamber.
Is this a hyperbaric oxygen chamber?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I mean, very interesting research around that in cancer,
Yes.
especially at Dom D'Agostino's lab. We've had him on, and yeah, amazing. He actually looked at cancer cells in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber exploding in real time. Yeah,
You're
really cool.
kidding me.
No, it's really really interesting because I'm not an expert at all, but it exposes the the cancer cells to essentially an oversaturation of oxygen, which is a really negative thing for a cancer cell. Great for your
That's
body. Yeah. I'll send some stuff after if it's of interest.
I
But
would love that. So if
yeah,
people are curious, in most cities you can access a hyperbaric chamber and pay for it. So you're not limited to having your own.
I think as well in America you can claim it through insurance with certain things as well. I
Uh-huh.
understand. Um, okay, so if you could sum up the future of intimacy in one sentence, what would it be?
In one sentence. Um, can I have more than one sentence?
Yeah, you can. We'll allow it. Just this once.
You so much. Um, I don't know. I think if we don't get better at taking care of each other emotionally and sexually, intimacy is going to be much more with tech than with human partners. So now is the time for us to do better with each other.
Do you find you mentioned that a lot? It's almost like, well, if you don't get it with your partner, there's this doorway that tech and porn and VR will fill. There's also a third doorway of sort of, I guess, infidelity, and if you're in a committed monogamous relationship, then
Hmm.
obviously that rule applies. Do you think it's harder these days to maintain a monogamous long-term relationship because there's
Absolutely.
okay,
Absolutely. I think it's harder than ever before because tech has, just other tech has brought so many opportunities for people to cheat online or whatever else that, yes, monogamy is only more difficult. You couple that with the fact that our expectations for our partner are only higher than ever, that this is a very tricky situation that we're in. And we're very focused right now in our culture about getting our own needs met and, all that. I think that needs to change if we want to maintain intimacy in some way that we understand it.
hmm, okay, okay, understood. And final question from me, Marianne, it's if you could put something on a billboard for everyone to see. Maybe it could be a quote, could be an idea, could be a book to read. What would it be?
You know what? Okay, so right now there is a book I would put on that billboard for this moment. Um, Jonathan Haidt wrote, I don't know how to say his last name, Haidt, wrote a book, The Anxious Generation, and it's really about tech and adolescence. And some of my colleagues say it's too simplistic. He doesn't have enough research. Look, I think we right now need to worry about our adolescence, and that's a place to start. So it's like cell phones and screen time and all of that stuff. That's what I would ask people to read it. And at Christmas I gave it to everyone I knew with kids, like just like we need to, it's got good ideas, good suggestions. It's a place to start. So yes, that's the book.
Brilliant. Well, we'll put it in the show notes for sure.
Oh, that's
Um,
awesome.
yeah, and everything we've spoken about, there'll be links to, and there'll be a lot of links. We've spoken about a lot of great stuff, which is
Oh,
amazing.
good.
Look, I really enjoyed speaking with you. That was really, really fascinating, and could go on for hours. But I'm
Oh,
sure you have better things to do than answer my questions. So, I actually came across yourself and your brilliant husband on your podcast, The Sex Doctors,
oh, that's
which I found on YouTube, which I definitely encourage people to check out because it is,
thank you.
yeah, it's really, really insightful. Where can we find you and keep up with your stuff, your work?
So let's see. The work that I am most proud of right now is my podcast, which is The Sex Doctors, which you can find on YouTube and wherever you listen to podcasts, but YouTube has a video as well. and my blog, which is very close to my heart, which is The Future of Intimacy, and that's on Psychology Today. So I've written, when I started that blog like 5 years ago or so, I wrote a variety of things like stuff we talked about today. Lately, I've been more focused on sex tech because I really feel like we need to get educated about that. But if people want more of just general sex and advice, go back in time, and it's there.
Okay,
So
wonderful, wonderful. Well, we'll add that to the links. And once again, thank you so much for coming on. Really enjoyed that.
I did too, Ben. Thank you so much.